Let me start with a simple question. Why does modern life feel like an endless treadmill of debt? You make payments, but somehow the balance never really seems to drop. You refinance, you roll over, you consolidate, but the obligation just sticks around like glue. What if I told you this feeling isn't a coincidence? What if the entire modern financial system was built on a formula invented 4,000 years ago and was never abandoned? Here's the part most people never see. The exact pressure you feel from modern debt is almost identical to what ancient farmers, merchants, and workers felt back in the Bronze Age. Today, we're going to peel back the layers and show you how that ancient system quietly evolved into the largest hidden financial engine on Earth. Before we dive in, do me a favor and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? I want this community to see just how widespread this conversation is becoming. And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe right now. This is where we talk about the unfiltered side of financial history. All right, let's travel back in time to ancient Mesopotamia. Around 2000 BC, this is where the first recorded debt contracts start showing up, etched onto clay tablets. They seem simple, right? A farmer borrows grain for the planting season. A merchant borrows silver for a trade voyage. But the more you study these tablets, the more shocking they become. Here's the hidden detail that historians rarely emphasize. Debt was the first truly transferable asset. It wasn't just a simple promise between two people, it was a form of currency. People began trading these debt claims. Governments would bundle them together. Temples held huge portfolios of these obligations from the public. Sound familiar? Even 4,000 years ago, society was already creating the core components of modern finance: collateral, leverage, long-term repayment chains, and most importantly, interconnected obligations that were never designed to be fully resolved. The system was built to keep rolling over. By 1792 BC, a powerful ruler named Hammurabi steps in. Why? Because these debt networks had grown so tangled and so predatory that entire populations were falling into debt bondage, essentially a form of servitude. His solution was radical: a full reset, a clean slate, a widespread debt cancellation, what we might call a jubilee. Why would a king cancel all debts? Because rulers realized something deeply uncomfortable. A system built entirely on compounding debt eventually collapses under its own weight. It consumes the very society it's meant to support. Now fast forward, ancient Egypt builds a similar system using grain warehouses as collateralized lending centers. The Roman Empire expands its power through massive debt-financed conquest. Medieval trade networks in Europe thrive on paper credit and bills of exchange, and every single time the debt chains become too heavy, you see the exact same pattern emerge. First, inequality spikes dramatically. Then, obligations concentrate into the hands of a very small elite. Finally, the system freezes up, economic activity grinds to a halt, and a painful reset follows, whether through revolution, collapse, or royal decree. Does that sound familiar yet? Now, let's enter the modern world, the supposed era of sophistication, technology, and progress. We didn't fix the ancient debt system. We didn't simplify it. We certainly didn't regulate it into a safer form. No, we turbocharged it. Instead of simple grain and silver contracts written on clay, we invented mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, derivatives, repo markets, and complex securitization chains. The ancient structure survived, it just got amplified by supercomputers, high-frequency trading, and global finance. And that brings us straight into the twist. Here's where everything turns. You'd think that with central banks, modern laws, and global oversight agencies, we would have improved the system, made it more stable, more fair. But instead, we did the opposite. We recreated a new high-tech version of the ancient palace economy only. Now it's hidden behind a wall of modern, confusing terminology. This hidden structure is called the shadow banking system. It's a parallel financial universe that creates trillions and trillions of dollars in credit. It moves debt around the globe in milliseconds. It finances the world's largest corporations and institutions. And it does all of this completely outside of traditional banking rules and regulations. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, it wasn't just mortgages collapsing. That was just the trigger. The real cataclysm was the sudden, violent implosion of all these invisible obligations, all linked together through derivatives, collateral chains, and off-balance sheet contracts that almost no one understood. It was the ancient debt network, supercharged and digitized, finally breaking. And here's the most unsettling part, the real twist. The entire global economy still relies on this hidden web today. It's bigger now than it was in 2008. Every pension fund you rely on for retirement, every major investment bank, every large financial institution, they all depend on a debt loop so ancient in its fundamental structure that a Babylonian king would instantly recognize it. Now, the question you're probably wondering is, who created this modern version? Who built the digital backbone of the biggest hidden credit engine in history? Because it wasn't just the banks, it wasn't just hedge funds, and it wasn't just governments reacting to crises. No, the real story is much deeper and much more intentional than that. And when I reveal the key mechanism and the architecture behind it, you will not believe the name. The receipt is wilder than you think. Part 2 of this series continues the full breakdown, including the hidden mechanics, the shocking numbers that prove its scale, and the final warning about where this is all heading. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching. Alright, let's connect the dots. The engine driving this entire modern financial machine, it's called derivatives. So, what are they? Simply put, a derivative is a contract whose value is derived from something else. That something else could be anything. A pile of mortgages, interest rates, currency exchange rates, or even the price of soybeans. But here's the crucial part, the part that echoes thousands of years of history. Derivatives allow massive financial institutions to create staggering obligations without ever recording them as traditional debt on their books. Think back to those ancient Mesopotamian debt tablets. They were promises circulating from palaces to temples, representing debts that weren't always visible. Today, derivatives are our modern debt tablets. They circulate through a shadowy network of banks, hedge funds, offshore entities, and complex corporate balance sheets. The scale is almost unimaginable. The official notional value is around $600 trillion. Some estimates push that number as high as $1 quadrillion. That's a 1 with 15 zeros. And that, right there, is our first shocking number. Let's break down the other numbers that expose the true scale of this system. Shocking number 2, $62 trillion. That's the amount of credit default swaps that existed right before the 2008 financial crisis. These are basically insurance-like bets that mortgage-backed securities would fail. To put that in perspective, $62 trillion was more than the GDP of the entire planet at the time. The bets placed on the collapse were bigger than the world's entire economic output. Shocking number 3, leverage ratios of 30-1. Before the crisis, some of Wall Street's biggest names were borrowing $30 for every single dollar of their own capital. Imagine you have $100 in your bank account, and you go out and borrow $3,000 to invest. This extreme leverage meant that even a tiny dip in their asset values, just a few percent, could completely wipe them out. And that's exactly what happened. Now for number 4, a part of the system most people have never even heard of, $4.3 trillion per day. That's the amount of money that quietly churns through the repo market. Repo, or repurchase agreements, is the plumbing of the financial system. It's where institutions go for extremely short-term, overnight loans, using their assets as collateral. Over $4 trillion every single day, moving in the background, keeping the entire machine lubricated. It's a colossal, vital market that operates almost entirely in the shadows. And that brings us to shocking number 5, which ties everything together. 97% of all money is just credit. When we talk about the global financial system, we're not talking about stacks of cash in a vault. Only about 3% is physical currency. The other 97%, it's all digital electronic claims, promises, and obligations. These are the modern-day versions of those clay tablets, zipping around the world at the speed of light. It's a system built not on tangible value, but on a vast interconnected web of debt. So, how does this all connect? This is where we see the real danger, what I call looping debt. It's not a straight line. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Here's how it works. A bank makes a loan, let's say a mortgage. That loan is then bundled together with thousands of other loans into a security. That security then gets used as collateral to get another loan. Then, a derivative is created on top of that security, betting on its performance. That derivative itself can then be used to anchor yet another loan, and that new loan can support a brand new derivative. Do you see the loop? The cycle just continues. Debt is used to create new debt. Risk is layered on top of new risk. And it's all happening in complex layers that the public, and sometimes even the regulators, can't fully see or comprehend. Just like in the ancient world, this system of looping obligations grows and grows, becoming more complex and more fragile until it becomes fundamentally unstable. And when that one crucial element breaks, when confidence is lost, the entire Jenga tower comes crashing down. Let's finish this with some brutal honesty. We are not facing the same debt system as ancient Mesopotamia. We are facing a version that is infinitely faster, vastly bigger, and more deeply interconnected than anything the world has ever seen. In the Bronze Age, when a debt system collapsed, it took down a city-state. In the Roman Empire, a financial crisis could cripple entire provinces. In 2008, the failure of a few institutions shook the entire global economy to its core. So what about next time? Imagine this system, but now add in high-speed, algorithmic trading that can execute millions of trades in a fraction of a second. Factor in global collateral chains, where an asset in Tokyo is used to back a loan in New York, which is then used in a derivative deal in London. And now layer on top of that, AI-driven markets that can react to news and create feedback loops faster than any human can process. The next shockwave won't take days or weeks to spread. It could circle the globe in minutes. Here is the ultimate non-negotiable lesson from 4,000 years of financial history. These complex debt systems don't just fade away. They build, and they build, and they build, until they snap. And then, they reset. Ancient kings understood this. They would declare a clean slate, a jubilee, forgiving debts to prevent societal collapse. In our modern world, we don't have kings wiping slates clean. We have governments and central banks. And their version of a reset is bank bailouts and printing trillions of dollars out of thin air. But look closely. The fundamental structure, the core incentives, the very nature of looping obligations, it's all still here. The system was patched up, not rebuilt. So the real multi-trillion-dollar question becomes this. When the next reset inevitably comes, who is going to pay the price? And more importantly, who will end up owning the system on the other side? If this breakdown helped you see the bigger pattern hiding in plain sight, hit that like button. And share this video with someone you think needs to understand how this all really works. Make sure to subscribe, because we're going to keep doing these deep dives, piece by piece. And I'll leave you with the same question we started with in part 1. After 4,000 years, are we any wiser? Or are we just walking the exact same path, only this time, in much better suits?